Howdy folks, Rob MaximumRD here, and I have decided to get back to basics. I don't know what that means. Anyways, my last couple videos admittedly have been a little more, maybe just a little more about self-promotion than anything. And now I want to get back on track and hopefully cover some topics that are a little more interesting for you, because I want to help you. Let me help you. Okie doke. So I've decided on 3 topics, and as I get my equipment in order, got my Pepsi Max right there. Pepsi Max. For my lunch, I have some nice pizza. Started off as a basic cheese pizza. My wife has lovingly added peppers, mushrooms, and pesto for some added flavor. So that's my lunch, and I'm all set to go. The 3 topics that I will be discussing over the next 3 videos, and I decided to break them up into 3 videos because I do realize that I can somewhat go on sometimes. And thought it might be better to separate the topics into 3 separate videos. That way, not only do you not get one super long video, but you only have to watch the video for the topic that you're interested in. And also on that note, as always, please comment, give me your thoughts, your point of view. Also, suggestions on possible future topics. If there's something you particularly want me to discuss or give you my view on, let me know. Of course, I am sticking to subjects that are related to classic gaming, computing, modern gaming, modern computing. You know, what I try to keep my channel all about. So yeah, I have no point of view on automobiles or sports or anything like that, but I think you probably already know that if you subscribe to my channel. Alrighty, so the 3 topics that I plan to tackle are emulation. It's always an interesting one, with some heated views on both sides. Flash cards, or flash cartridges, you know, devices like the EverDrive Mega Drive and the RetroGen USB Power Pack. What else? There's the Atari Max line, like the Coleco SD card, things like that. Basically, cartridges that take another form of media, or have flash memory to flash them to, and basically they hold ROMs, and regardless of what you think, that really is about as far as the emulation connection goes when it comes to flash cards. Flash cards are not emulation, but I'll cover that when I cover the topic, because I know some of you are a little confused on that one. And lastly, clone systems, or clone hardware, otherwise known as Famiclones. Basically, newer produced hardware, or hardware produced not by the original console manufacturer, but by third-party companies that play all your original classic systems, from Sega Genesis to NES to, of course, Famicom and Super Nintendo, so on and so forth, on new hardware that is a clone of the original hardware, but not really a 100% clone, as I'll get into, because that's going to be the first topic I cover in this first topics video. So, Famiclones. A lot of manufacturers, particularly Chinese manufacturers, they created their own hardware that allowed you to play Famicom games, NES games. Those were probably some of the earliest Famiclones or cloned hardware to come out. Now there are different views. Some will tell you a lot of conflicting information out there, of course. Big surprise. There are those that say that, and I've read this, that basically the so-called hardware license that Nintendo held on the original NES and Famicom had expired at some point, which allowed the market to be flooded with compatible or semi-compatible hardware that plays those original cartridges. And again, I'm only relaying to you some of the things I've read and some of the views that I've seen. I am not confirming nor denying or anything like that, because it goes back and forth. There will be those who agree with this, there will be those that argue, and there will be those that have more information about it, work in the industry, what have you. I'm just giving you my view as I have seen and researched myself, but I am not implying that it is the end-all be-all answer, which is why, as I said, on this and all my topics, I welcome your opinion, your feedback, your suggestions. Okay, so now, as far as these consoles go, and they're not always consoles, there's also been handhelds that fall into this category of cloned hardware, portables, pretty much, whatever you have, whatever device or console or system that you have to play your original software on, there's been a pirate or cloned version of it made. Many of them are newer ones now. Companies like Hyperkin, for example, produce several products that they apparently are legally licensed to produce. Yobo is another manufacturer of these. At Games, yet another one. And I myself have bought a couple of them, and will tell you right off the bat, I was enticed by the perceived pluses to these systems. Let's go over that. What are the so-called pros to these type of devices? Well, obviously, first and foremost, what attracted me is the fact that it was new hardware. New hardware being produced today. Because when it comes to NES and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, obviously it's not everybody owns an original system. You have to track one down. If you're lucky, you'll come across one at, say, a thrift shop, or perhaps at like a Salvation Army, or even a game store that still deals in older used equipment, perhaps a pawn shop. Of course, there's eBay, which itself has its plus and minuses. Maybe that should be a future topic. Wow, we could do a lot with that one. But the bottom line is, if you don't own your original system from back in the day, you have to acquire it from someplace, and depending where you look, you'll either get one that works, semi-works, or is in need of some kind of refurbishment or repair. So yeah, the idea of brand new hardware that allows you to play your original cartridges is very tempting indeed. That was one of the things that swayed me to try a few. And so that was one reason. Number two is convenience. Again, they're more readily available. And when I say convenience, for example, Some of these systems, one example being the Retron 3 by Hyperkin, actually can play more than one platform at a time. It is actually capable of playing the cartridges for an original NES, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis. Pretty impressive to be able to play 3 different formats in one console. So again, that's convenience. Instead of pulling out 3 separate systems, you have one system to play back all of them. So that's 2 so-called pros. 3, price. Generally, they're pretty well priced, being mostly cheaper manufactured Chinese products. Not necessarily, but in many cases, you know, they're lower priced. Some will still argue the price, though, saying, well, you know, this is brand new hardware, and considering what they use inside, like, for example, the NOAC, N-O-A-C, the Nintendo on a Chip hardware. It's been around for a while now, and it's very small. It's pretty much what the name implies, a Nintendo on a chip. It's all your Nintendo custom chips reduced to a very simplified chip that handles all the requirements for these games. And if you were to open up a compatible Famiclone or cloned hardware, you'd see that there's very little inside, actually. A lot of these systems are very light because of this. So yeah, I suspect not a lot of costly hardware is inside of these things. But the other end of it is it's very much a niche market. It's a very small market. So they're not really produced on a real mass scale, like compared to something like, obviously, like a 360 or PS3 or something like that. So even though it's cheaper hardware inside, they have to balance it by how many they actually produce. So is it really a value? Well, I mean, some of the lower end ones that play the Nintendo games can probably be had for as little as, you know, around $20, which, you know, sounds pretty competitive. I think my Retron 3 was something around 59 or 69, somewhere along those lines. And considering it plays 3 different platforms, that's doesn't sound too bad either, does it? For new hardware, especially. So yeah, convenience, price, and new hardware are 3 of the perceived pros to these systems. And when I say perceived, I'll explain why now, and it kind of spills over into the cons of these systems. Although those things swayed me into getting a couple, which I did, one being the FC Mobile 2 by Hyperkin. This is a portable device to play your original NES cartridges on. It comes with 2 wireless controllers, a gun, and the system, which also has TV out and allows you to play on your television. I demonstrated this in one of my older videos, and at the time, you know, I was quite favorable in my review. I've since kind of changed my mind on that, and I'll get to why shortly. The other one I had purchased was a Retron 3, which was the 3-in-1 system. Unfortunately, I had a little accident with that system. I had some things piled on top of it, and the case was cracked. So, well, I'll show you the box for it anyways, because I still have that. Again, by Hyperkin. Wireless controllers came with it, and it plays all 3 of your systems, NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and it has the bonus of having original controller ports for all 3 systems built right in. So yeah, again, considering you can use your original controllers, there's wireless controllers included, and it accompanies 3 different classic systems. You figure, wow, that's convenient and a decent price. Now, the problem and the cons and why I will not buy any more cloned hardware. When you consider how much you spend for these products, they really are cheaply and poorly made. There's 3 main, or let's see, well, here's the main cons. Incompatibility problems. Incompatibility, that's a big one right there. Next, although I listed this as a pro, some might list it as a con regarding price, because looking at one point of view, it's a great price for what you're getting in one way, but at the same time, some will argue it's overpriced because it's so cheaply made. So that's not really for me to say. That's up for you to decide. And the other con, well, again, as I touched on, it's just very cheaply made hardware. A good example with the FC Mobile, where you plug the cartridge in, there was a thin, I guess you would call it a dust cover, kind of like most systems, like think Sega Genesis. You plug the cartridge in, it opens the dust cover and allows you to insert the cartridge. While the so-called dust cover on this unit was such a flimsy plastic, I could only compare it to the plastic version of balsa wood. It was so light and thin, it was practically non-existent. And from the very first cartridge I inserted, one side of the hinge cracked off of the dust cover. And I did repair it originally by gluing it, and then I said, forget it. I just totally removed it because I knew after inserting the cartridge a few times that it would just break anyways. So again, yeah, that goes back to the build quality and cheapness of this actual hardware. And the other thing, although I was pleased with the overall performance of the FC Mobile 2, another problem with these type of products, and it's with a few of them, you know, if you're sitting there and you're using it hooked up to your TV, that's usually okay. For a so-called mobile device, you have to be very careful not to move the device too much, because if the cartridge moves back or forth even slightly, it could freeze the game or glitch the graphics or have some other adverse effects. It doesn't really hold the cartridge in really tightly. I'm not saying that's for the case for all the so-called portable Famiclones, but in the case of the FC Mobile 2, it is definitely an issue. And the Retron 3, well, it's a good thing that it has 3 ports to use your original controllers with, because the included wireless controllers, which I'm sure you've heard from a few people now who's reviewed this product, are total crap. They're garbage. You need direct line of sight, for one thing, in order to use them, and even so, they are just so light and flimsy, and just overall, they're just crap. You're really better off using your original controllers. And this brings me back to the point of, if it comes to that point where the included controllers are pretty much garbage and you're going to be using original controllers, perhaps from your original system, just use an original system. You know, some of the benefits here, like AV out, using composite, possibly S-video, and this doesn't always apply to all 3 sides of it. You can get an improved picture for some of it, like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, but not necessarily for the NES side of it. You know, you could always probably get your original console modified. If it only runs RF output, then you could probably get it modified for composite or S-video, or even, you know, VGA or something like that, or get some kind of adapter. I won't be buying anymore. I'm just overall not happy. I guess the two big things that I was disappointed in was the build quality and the issues that I mentioned with the cheapness of these products. And the last one, which is a big one with a lot of people, they are known for incompatibilities. Whereas the Super Nintendo and Genesis compatibility is pretty good overall. Pretty good. There are still some sound, sometimes color, and speed glitches, some slight inaccuracies. But for the most part, the Super Nintendo and Genesis comes off pretty well, but I don't know what it is. They just can't get it together when it comes to the original 8-bit NES or Famicom games. Again, because utilizing that Nintendo on a chip design, some of them have the newer versions of it, and compatibility has improved. I've heard that the portable retro gen, the newer one that's just come out recently, apparently that's quite good with the compatibility. There's been issues with certain games, like let's say Castlevania 3, either just not running at all or having glitched graphics. With Super Nintendo games, some of the games that require some of the chips that came later on, like the FX chip, a game like Stunt Racer FX, or even like Star Fox. I've heard Super Mario, the RPG game, is that what it's called? I forget the specifics. That even that one has been flawed, either not working or having an issue with the graphics. So compatibility is another big issue. Again, if you're someone who just has a few cartridges lying around and you just want a quick, simple, easy way to play them, then you might be satisfied with the offerings from clone manufacturers. But in the end, when it comes down to it, I say track down an original piece of hardware, get an original NES, an original Super Nintendo, an original Sega Genesis, and whatever platform you're considering buying a clone for, and instead track down an original system, maybe from a good seller that has a good reputation on eBay or something like that, or if you can find someone locally who even refurbishes or repairs these systems, if the knowledge is beyond yourself, do that. I think it's worth it. The time and maybe the extra money that you might spend, I'm sure will provide you with a system that will last you years and years longer, give you 100% compatibility, obviously, perfect playback of your original games, and this way you'll be playing them and remembering them as they were meant to be, not with flaws or incompatibilities or inaccurate color or sound rendering. It's just not worth it, my opinion. Clone hardware is not worth it. As I said, I know some of you have some clone hardware, Yobo systems, systems from Hyperkin, and if you're happy with them, that's great. I take nothing away from that. I'm just telling you, I will not be buying any more cloned hardware, and I'll be getting rid of what I have. So that's it. I know it's gone on for too long, as always. We'll see how the next couple topics go. Rob, MaximumRD out.